Final Fantasy is one of the longest-running and most beloved series in video game history, featuring hundreds of characters spread out over almost 20 core games and even more offshoots. When a game universe gets this popular and unruly, there are bound to be myths and rumors popping up. Here's a look at some false facts about Final Fantasy you always thought were true. Set up to fail. One of the most persistent myths about the Final Fantasy series is that Square, in a thrilling underdog story, named their 1987 RPG Final Fantasy because they thought it would be the last game they'd ever make before going belly up. Obviously, Square went on to make $1 zillion and a zillion more Final Fantasy games and tie-in products.
Final Fantasy XII Potion.
So it's pretty ironic that they were so sure they were going to fail that they named the game Final Fantasy, right? Well, no. Turns out the name was almost completely random. The game's creator, Hironobu Sakaguchi, says his team was simply looking for a title that could be abbreviated to FF in English, because the pronunciation, Fufu, is pleasing in Japanese. They actually wanted to go with the far more aggressive title, Fighting Fantasy, but that name was already taken. Instead, they settled on Final Fantasy, which even Sakaguchi admits has caused some logic problems.
Final Fantasy 2? That doesn't even make sense!
Aeris can be revived. It's one of the most shocking and iconic scenes in gaming history. Halfway through Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth stabs Flower Girl Aeris in the back with his sword, killing her instantly. This wasn't the usual RPG death, where a character is just technically KO'd until you Phoenix down them back to consciousness. This death was the real deal. A bold, rare move for a video game in 1997. It was such a stunning scene, in fact, that rumors started circulating right away about methods to bring Aeris back from the dead. Surely she can't be dead for real, right? 2 decades after the game was released, heartbroken gamers still flock to websites and forums looking for hope, but there's none to be found. There is no possible way to revive or keep Aeris alive without cheating, except for choosing to never reach the point in the game where she dies. Squall is dead. In sort of an inverse to the bring back dead people rumors, there's a persistent myth that Squall in Final Fantasy VIII is actually dead after the end of Disc 1, and the other 3 discs are just a vision he has as he's kicking the bucket. But besides being a hacky trope too far-fetched even for Square, it just doesn't make any sense, as many gamers online have outlined. The theory is great for fanfic, but in the real world, not so much. Turtle power. Blame Conan O'Brien for this one. On the talk show host's hilarious Clueless Gamer Final Fantasy XV segment, O'Brien is told that battling the towering Adamantoids would take a whopping 72 hours of real time to defeat.
Why would someone play this? Why would someone play this game?
The legend of the Adamantoids grew when game director Hajime Tamata claimed that wasn't quite right, and that it was more like 15 hours. Like that's any better. Fortunately, YouTubers have since whittled that down to 6 minutes or less. Of course, fans had reason to believe Square Enix was capable of such insanity. In 2008, Final Fantasy XI made headlines after the world's elite players spent 18 hours trying to defeat the boss Pandemonium Warden, only to give up after several people began barfing and passing out from the effort. Still not the most annoying thing Square Enix has ever done, though.
I'm the Bosch von Ronsenberg. Bosch lives! Bosch lives! Bosch lives! Bosch lives!
N64 flimflam. In October 1995, GameFan magazine published a story claiming that Square was developing a new game called Final Fantasy VII for the N64, with a tentative release date of December 1996. One problem: none of that was true. In fact, the demo that the folks at GameFan had seen wasn't Final Fantasy VII, and it wasn't for the N64. Instead, it was a mock-up called Final Fantasy VI, the interactive CG game, designed to showcase what a 3D Final Fantasy game might look like in the future. And it was never intended to be released at all. Way to get literally everything wrong, diehard game fan. Barret is Final Fantasy's first black character. While Barret from Final Fantasy VII was definitely the first black character in the series to take on a starring role in the saga,
by the way, what are your names?
That dog can
he wasn't actually the first black character in the series, as some fans might think. That title goes, believe it or not, to General Leo from Final Fantasy VI. Of course, this is what you're probably thinking. General Leo looks like Macklemore. What are you even talking about? While it's true his in-game sprite looked Caucasian due supposedly to palette limitations, his in-game character portrait and his promotional art portray him as black with a blonde mohawk. So toss that image of Macklemore and replace it with Simon Phoenix. Thanks for watching. Click the grunge icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.